Okay, well, I'm going to start out with something that sounds like Michael and I. A man feared for his wife that she wasn't hearing as well as she used to, and he thought she might need a hearing aid. Well, not quite sure how to approach her, he called the family doctor to discuss the problem. The doctor told him there's a simple, informal test that you can do at home. He said, now here's what you do. You stand about 40 feet away from her, and in a normal conversational speaking voice, you ask her a question and see if she hears you. If not, then go 30 feet, do the same question in the same voice, and if not, then move to 20 feet, and so on until you get a response. I thought, well, okay, I can do that. So that evening, the wife was in the kitchen. She was cooking dinner, and he was in the den. So he thought to himself, this is a good time. I'm about 40 feet away. I'm going to see what happens. So in a normal voice, he says, honey, what's for dinner? No response. So he goes about 30 feet closer to the kitchen. He says the same thing, normal voice, honey, what's for dinner? No response. So now he goes 20 feet. Honey, what's for dinner? No response. So he walks into the kitchen, and now he's about 10 feet away from her. And he says, honey, what's for dinner? And she turns around and says, I told you, and now for the 5th time, it's chicken. So who has the hearing problem? Michael and I are all the time. I'm like, you don't hear me. And then he goes, you don't hear me. So I don't know. I think we both need to go to the hearing doctor. Oh, it's no accident that Thanksgiving comes right before we move into the Advent season. It's no accident. Why? Because we can't progress into birthing a new Christ consciousness, a new way of being, which is what Christmas Day is all about, birthing the Christ consciousness in us. We cannot do it until we are in a state of gratitude. You must be in gratitude before you can move into hope and faith and peace and love and joy, those 4 weeks of Advent that we celebrate. Without gratitude being your foundation, none of that is going to really stick in order for you to truly birth a new way of being. We've lit the first Sunday of Advent, and so now we're at Hope and Peace, starting off this season. So let's put the first slide up there. That's a pretty one. There we go. What I'm trying to cultivate is not blind optimism, but radical hope. I hear quite often, I've lost hope. You hear that? Have you ever felt that? I have felt it. Wherever that ambulance is going right now could be somebody that's lost hope as we send them healing energy wherever they're going. Sometimes unity is accused of Pollyannish thinking. So that's why I say hope is not blind optimism. Pollyannish, that positive thinking, blah, blah, blah. You aren't in the real world in unity. But absolutely we are in the real world, because you will always hear me say, we have a foot in the human world, plain earth school, humanity, all that stuff, and we also have a foot in the spiritual realm, knowing the truth of who we are. And we're walking both of those. We're walking them all the time. Let's go to that next one. Hope is being able to see that there is light despite all the darkness. So, think about that. Sometimes there are people, including myself, sometimes you get a diagnosis. And for moments, or for days, or maybe for weeks, your hope is shaken. You've heard that, right? My hope and my faith have been shaken. Okay? Hope is being able to see the light despite the darkness that is appearing in front of me. Many, many situations that can be relevant to that. Not just health issues, loss of job, change of job, loss of a relationship, death of a loved one. It can even be, I look at you young parents, and I'm like, you can lose hope on, am my kids ever going to turn out all right? Molly and I were just talking before service, all this technology, I can't take it, all this technology. And I look at all you young parents going, It's a critical issue going on right now, isn't it? But then I look at some of us adults, and we don't want to face that we've got our phone up constantly, scrolling the news, Facebook Messenger, tweeting somebody, Instagram, Snapchat. I'm probably missing a few others because I can't keep up with all of it. But we don't want to claim that one because I'm an adult and I'm gathering information. Too much information is not good, right? It's an addictive thing. I'm going down another rabbit hole. Let's stay on hope and faith. So hope is being able to see that there is light despite all the darkness. So then, I was reading something about Ukraine. I Googled stories of hope in Ukraine. You want to feel good? Google that and read those stories. Because what is on the news app is going to be things of the darkness. But I'm saying go Google the stories you want to hear. Because there's gobs of them out there. There's a book of hope written by Jane Goodall. Did you know that? This is recent. The Book of Hope. And she is, 92? And she is out there still doing her work, still proclaiming that there is still hope for our planet despite what we have done to it. There is still hope for our animal family despite what we have done to it. You want to talk about hope? Just YouTube her and listen to what she's got to say. Your hope will be raised. And when your hope is raised, your faith comes in right alongside of it. You need both. You need both. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the conviction of things not seen. Let's go to that next slide. Talk about hope and faith. My granddaughter couldn't wait for Thanksgiving to be over because the very next morning she didn't just hope, she had faith that those elves were going to be in the house. And of course they were. And every morning now, she can't wait to wake up to see where they've moved in the house again. She doesn't just hope. She has spent time hoping that the elves are going to come back. But by the night she goes to bed on Thanksgiving, she has 100% faith that those elves are going to be there. Why why is it that we can't have that kind of faith? Oh, because we're afraid we'll be disappointed. That's my story, right? And what happens as children get older, they start to question if those elves are going to show up. They start to question their faith in things hoped for. How is it that Jesus said, you must have faith of a little child in order to enter the kingdom of heaven? How would we metaphysically interpret that? We metaphysically interpret that as the faith, the wonder, the hope of a child. Not childish ways. It is the hope and faith and the wonder and the belief that children have. And then you will enter into the gates of heaven. You will enter into heaven consciousness. Because in Unity, we believe that heaven and hell are states of consciousness. They are not a place where you're going to go when you die. And like Santa Claus list, you're going to go there if you've been good. And if you've been bad, you're going to go there. No, we subscribe to the understanding that it is way more than that. The garden, and Jane Goodall would agree with me, the garden is here. The Garden of Eden has always been here. We're the ones that keep leaving it. We're the ones that keep doing things to destroy it. The garden is always here. I love these guys. I think that we all ought to subscribe to having elves on the shelf in our own house to remind you that's the faith and wonder and belief and things hoped for. Don't lose that. Don't lose that this Christmas season. It's okay. It's okay to be like a little child and go get in your car and go to Sharon Woods and watch the wonder of the lights. Go to the PNC, what's that one called? The Festival of Lights? Is that right? I mean, go see a train display. Go anything that brings you back to that little boy and little girl in you that has never left you. But we, through our powerful, infinite wisdom, I feel like the great Wizard of Oz, you know? Infinite wisdom of the Oz has spoken. No. She and he are still inside you, dying to come out. That's why we love to gravitate around our young children, don't we? Because they remind us of that child within. Boy, I could go on that one. Oh, I mean, look, it's time. Yes. So these guys to me represent hope and faith. Nature has no problem, does it? Nature doesn't have the thinking mind that we have. Nature doesn't have the free will to make decisions. Nature just is. And boy, if we could just be more like that, right? No matter what, there's always hope and there is faith in nature. Can we pull up that video, please? Once the seed of faith take root, a whole forest can appear. You're the seed. You're that seed. When I watched that short video, I thought, wow, we're all the seed. And we have to water ourselves, don't we? We need to nurture ourselves. We need to plant ourselves in good soil. How do you plant yourself in good soil? You be around people that are nurturing, people that are supportive. That's why we come to our community, our soul family here, because this is fertile soil from which to grow on, right? So, and watering is the same way. Watering through affirmations, through prayer, through positive readings, reading the daily word every day, subscribing to the daily word. Anything that you can fill your mind will help your seed grow. You are about to birth a new seed at Christmas time. That whole metaphysics of the Christmas story will show up on December 18th here. But it is such a powerful story because this is a story of you. It is a story of every aspect of you in your life is the Christmas story. It's so, so powerful. Let's go to that next slide, please. It's from Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope for a future. I want you to understand what the metaphysics of the term Lord is. Lord is the activity of the spiritual I am as a ruling consciousness. The Lord God of the Scriptures is the Christ, the spiritual man, the Christ within, our divine consciousness, our creative power. If you want to just dumb it down a little bit, you can take Lord and replace it with oneness consciousness, and it will do the same thing in the sentence. But it is your spiritual I am. So when saith the Lord, you're talking to the I am in yourself. This is not blasphemy. I did not get struck by lightning saying that. Just want you to know. This is something to consider. Because when you start to look at some of these words metaphysically, and actually some of it literally, but what's been ingrained in our minds as children, for many of us were raised that those statements meant the Lord, the great and powerful Oz, right? And he really was the man behind the curtain. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the I am. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the I am. Plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. The I am in me knows that. But it's when I get up here in my head that I argue it, and then ego steps in and says, oh, I got her. Now, let's focus on the things in the material world. Let's focus on the sense consciousness. Let's focus on your hurt feelings. Let's focus on all those past hurts, Kathy. When the true spiritual I am knows that I am here to prosper. I am prospering right now in all ways of my life. And when you can start to shift your consciousness to these concepts, your life will be different. Your family will be different. Your experiences will be different. I can promise you that. I literally can promise you that. There's a story. Maybe I will read it. I will. There's a story I found. And I think it came maybe out of Guidepost. I don't know. But there was a girl named Missy, and she was in college, and it was time for finals. And college was nothing but pressure on top of pressure for her. She was carrying a full class load. It's the fall semester, sophomore year. She's feeling like she had the weight of the world on her. And the fact that it was Friday and she was going to go home for the weekend, but she couldn't even enjoy or even have hopes for the weekend being something wonderful with her family. She hadn't been home for a couple months. All she could think about was that she's got to study more. She's got to study more. She's got to get her grades up. She drove her usual route home. She saw all the familiar sights along the way. She knows the route like the back of her hand. Nothing was bringing her out of this consuming thoughts of school and the pressure of school. And so as she was driving, getting closer home, she saw this old 2-story house that looked dilapidated on the outside. She's always seen it. It's always looked that way ever since she's been a child. And there was an older man sitting out on the front, as always, apparently always, and she's from Texas, so they're sitting outside in the fall. And he's in a chair, and he's got his old black lab laying at his feet on the grass, and he's sitting there with his Bible, and he's reading to the dog. Now, this is a familiar sight to her. He's always been this way, and the neighborhood has always known him to be the old man in the dilapidated house who reads a book to his dog. That's kind of how they've always noticed him. But for some reason, on her way home, she thought how lonely that must be for that man to be only reading to his dog, right? She pulls into the driveway a block down the road, turns the car around, goes back, parks the car in front of his house, and gets out and says, "Hello, Mr. Diggs." She knew his name, but never really ever approached him. And he greets her, and she said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm reading the Bible to my dog." And he just seemed very happy about it, And he says, my wife and most of my friends are gone from this world. And she said, "But you're all alone." He said, "I would never say I'm alone as long as I have my faith. As long as I have my faith." "Yes, yes, boy." And he pets his dog again. And he says, "I know, I got you too. I'm not alone." And he leaned back over, started reading his Bible again. He says, "You have time for a story, Misty?" Misty was her name. And the dog's name is Blue. And Blue liked to listen to me read. He says, she said, "Well, maybe just one." Have you ever been there when somebody wanted to talk to you? And you're like, "Oh, crap. I only got 1 minute, right? Now this is going to take longer than a minute." But she said, "I do, but I just have a minute," saying it very nervous. And he turned to the story of the first Christmas in the book of Luke. He said, "I hope this doesn't," she thinks to herself, "Oh, God, I don't know how long that story is. I hope it's not too long," right? She's having all these thoughts again. And so he reads the story, and he's slowing down on certain parts. And then finally he got done. And she said, "I better get going. My parents are holding dinner, and I have loads of schoolwork to do." And Mr. Diggs said, "Come back anytime." He said, "Old Blue and I will be here. You can count on that." She said, "I'd stop by again," but pretty quick she fell back into her old routine of studying, worrying about studying in between. And on the day before school let out for Christmas break now, she's driving down the street, and Mr. Diggs was there on his porch, but no dog, no Blue. Something was wrong. She stretched her neck to look into the grass. He was gone. "No way could I stop. What would I say?" she said. "So I went home. I threw myself onto the bed, feeling guilty that I should have stopped. I should have said something. I should have asked him about the dog. Time for dinner," and her mom gives her, it's the day before Christmas, and her mom gives her homemade meatloaf. She doesn't want to eat. Her mom says, "What's wrong?" And she tells her how bad she's feeling, that she is worried about Mr. Diggs. So she decides to drive down to Mr. Diggs' house again. And Mr. Diggs says, "It's okay." He said, "Blue disappeared, and I don't know if he'll be back or not." And he says, she's crying, and he hands her a hanky. He says, "Don't forget, Misty, I still have my faith. That's a constant in my life. Hard as it may be through all the rough patches, I pray for Blue to come home, and now it's up to the Lord." Absolutely. These are great stories. Up to the Lord. It's up to the Lord. It's up to us. It's up to the I am in me to shift my consciousness, right? Okay? You want a healing, you can ask the Lord up there for all the healing you want. But if you are not right in your consciousness and claiming the I am, that I am healed. Just quick side note. Yesterday morning, I've been having pain pain here for 3 weeks. Pain, just right here. No redness, no swelling, nothing, right here. And I call the doctor, and by Jove, they've got a cancellation yesterday morning. I go in. He says, I'm not sure, but I think you got shingles. I had shingles 4 months ago. I'm like, are you kidding me? There's no bumps or anything, right? I could touch it like this, but I couldn't touch it like that. Now, part of me wanted to go home and just lay in bed, turn on my Crown episode, because I'm on season 3, right? And just kind of feel sorry for myself. But I know spiritually what was mine to do. And what was mine to do was claim the I am within me, and I am health, and I am healing. And I look at many of you that do this on a regular basis and continue to heal as a result of it, because you know the spiritual truth. And I'm calling it forth. Now, it doesn't mean that I'm completely over shingles, but I touched there today. I don't know why. Maybe it's just going out of its way. But I like to believe that it has to do with because I'm staying in the I am. Things happen. So back to Mr. Diggs, he's holding on to his faith, right? He's believing that that dog's going to come home. And sure enough, down the road comes all the neighbor kids, and they're yelling, and there comes Blue following the neighbor kids, and he comes home. Why do I tell you that story? I don't know. I think it's a good, heartwarming story that reminds me of hope and faith. Why do I watch Hallmark movies? Because they remind me of hope and faith, even though they're sappy at times, right? And I know the ending every single time, right? Oh, yeah, somebody's lost their love, and then they leave home and go to a vacation cabin, and then they meet the love of their life, who's the one who saddles up the horse, right? And they live up life happily ever after. Why do we watch them? Because it taps into hope and faith. That's why. So, for this season, let's put up that weekly affirmation, please. This is a thought I want you to hold on to. I affirm the highest and best for all humanity with the hope and faith of a child, with the hope and faith of Elf on the Shelf. Let's say this together. You don't have to say the Elf on the Shelf part. Ready? I affirm the highest and best for all humanity with the hope and faith of a child. I love the giggles. Yes. Let's one more time. I affirm the highest and best for all humanity with the hope and faith of a child. Namaste. The Christ presence, the Lord in me, that Christ presence truly sees and honors that Christ presence, that childlike presence in each and every one of you. Namaste.